And we continue with our elections coverage. There's been winners and losers in this year's national and provincial elections, no doubt about that. And with the ANC enduring an electoral decline from just over 57% in 2019 to this year current turnout of more than 40%. Analysts have attributed so many factors to the ruling party's decline, including the formation of the Umkhonto weSizwe party under the leadership of former President Jacob Zuma and the increased number of new and smaller parties that have contested in this year's elections. To give us an analysis on this and other election matters, we joined virtually by Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, the Director of the Center for the Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy, CANRAD, at the Nelson Mandela University. Prof, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning, Simpiwe, and good morning to your viewers.
Prof, it seems like the ANC is facing a conundrum right now on how to face the future without having a majority for the first time since 1994. What's at stake here?
Yes, you are right, Simpiwe. There is a lot at stake, and I think that President Cyril Ramaphosa's political image has been severely dented. Those who asked him not to resign will regret this, because the president would have resigned gracefully after the Phala saga. Now he will be going down to history as the first president of the ANC under whose leadership the ANC got below 50%, which is something that is unprecedented. So the question then becomes, what does the ANC have to do from now on? Obviously, the first answer is that it has to do self-introspection and then try to establish how it got here, and then, of course, try to find a way to get out of this deep hole. As to whether then they will survive this, only time will tell.
And I suppose it falls squarely on the shoulders of President Cyril Ramaphosa, because he oversaw a party that fell from a support base of over 57% in 2019 to a huge decline of over 40% this year. What went wrong for the ruling party? Would you attribute it to the formation of smaller and newer parties in general, and the Umkhonto weSizwe party in particular, or would you attribute it to the general unhappiness that the populace has in the party with regards to all the social ills that the country has seen: corruption, load shedding, inequality, joblessness, and so on?
All the factors we have just highlighted are absolutely correct. But my view is that the performance of the ANC is basically a wound that is self-inflicted. It started with this factional politics, which meant that you were to appoint people into certain positions, not because they had the requisite skills and knowledge, but because they were in the quote-unquote right faction. That was the start of all these problems. And then, of course, when the president assumed the position, he did so under false pretenses, which is the same thing that happened with Frederick Chiluba in Zambia, where he said he was a unionist, he was a church person, and therefore he was going to correct everything that Kenneth Kaunda had done in that country. The same happened in our country when the president took office, finishing former President Zuma's term on the 15th of February 2018. One of the things he did when he went to Davos was to talk about the 9 wasted years. That is where things started going wrong, because you cannot be in the same organization, and then the moment you are elevated into the position of power, you then dismiss everything that has happened before you as if you were not there. He was a deputy president of the party, he was a deputy president of the country, and therefore he could not claim to have not known anything. And therefore coming up with what he called the new dawn. I asked the question, where does the issue of the new dawn come in when you are in the same organization, implementing the same policies? So that in itself, in fact, meant that the president was not going to enjoy support from everyone within the ANC, especially those who know the culture of the ANC of collective responsibility. If something goes right, we all celebrate. If something goes wrong, we all regret what we've done. But now Prof, it comes in, then it says...
Yeah, we're out of time, unfortunately. But just taking into cognizance the fact that the party has also lost support in Gauteng, getting, what, 36.49%, and in KwaZulu-Natal, 17.63% of the vote. Some say this was also determined by tribalism. What do you make of such an insinuation?
You know, this tribalism narrative is nonsense. I'm sorry I'm saying this term, this word in national television, but it is dangerous. And unfortunately, it's senior people who are pushing that narrative. It's very dangerous. Rwanda lost over 200,000 people because of such statements. It's wrong. The ANC has always enjoyed supporting KwaZulu-Natal, being the biggest province of the ANC. There was no talk about tribalism. And then, of course, the eThekwini region has always been the biggest region of the ANC. There was no talk about tribalism. And then suddenly, when the MK party emerges victorious, or at least leading the pack, then this term is being invoked. It's a very dangerous term, which is not going to take us anywhere. And it should be, in fact, dismissed with all the contempt that it deserves. It's very dangerous for the country.
Let's turn our attention now to the Democratic Alliance. That party's support has increased from 20.77% in 2019 to 21.79% this year. Was their campaign messaging clear, and what do you attribute this increase to?
No, the DA has a firm grip of the Western Cape, and it has the ANC to thank for that. For the ANC, the Western Cape under Mcebisi Skwatsha and Ibrahim Rasool. And then it decided to take the Western Cape, put it on a silver platter, and hand it over to the DA. And the DA said, thank you very much. And it has kept that province, and I don't see it letting it go. Right. And the smaller parties have come on board, but they've not been able to displace the DA because it has been pushing the message that we've governed this province well, we've gotten a clean audit, and therefore things are working. We've created job opportunities. We have our own agenda in terms of addressing the electricity crisis. That is the messaging that has been going through. So if the other smaller parties had come together, they would have done better. But then, of course, each of these parties wanted to do it its own way, and then that worked in the DA's favor. Hence, then, this particular results that you are referring to.
All right, Professor, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your analysis with us. We do appreciate your time. Well, that was Professor Begim Gomezulu, the director of the Center for the Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at the Nelson Mandela University, giving us his political analysis on the results, outcomes of this year's national and provincial elections. And Liz, I suppose that we're going to be needing more of their services moving forward, because this will herald a different direction for the country's politics.
Experts are weighing in. We're obviously also awaiting the IC to declare the results. They have 7 days to do so. So there's a lot that's happening. Declarations. We're also looking at some of the disputes coming through. But we continue with that and more on the SABC, so do stay tuned.